Live on camera.
I am live. All right. All right. And Richard is not coming?
I am ready.
Okay. All right. Well, most of you know me except for you. My name is Jody, as it probably did say a moment ago. Killick Home Inspection is my company. And today we're going to talk mostly about heating systems and the kinds that there are and just give you an overview of what we have mostly around the city because there's only really a few that you're going to run into fairly consistently. And then we'll talk about maybe a few questions and a few things that you guys as agents can be looking for when you're at a house, just certain things depending on what kind of system you have. So there are two categories. Central heating systems are mostly the forced air furnace and the hot water baseboard. And basically what that means is you have a source of heat in your house that runs to all sorts of parts of your house. So when you think of a furnace and you have the ductwork that goes to every individual room, you have a furnace in one place, it's central. If you have a boiler system, same thing. It's down in your basement probably, and you have pipes going somewhere, and it goes to all parts of your house. That's a central heating system. The space heaters are pretty much everything else. So when you think of your wood stoves, wood stove inserts, pellet stoves, electric baseboard heaters, and we'll get a little bit of a combination with the heat pumps. It basically means whatever room that's in, that's where that heat is focused in, and it can certainly go everywhere else, but if you start closing doors, it closes it up. So it's a space heater. It means for a space. You think for a wood stove is a good example. You put a wood stove in your rec room is going to get super hot, and if you leave all your doors open, the rest of the house will get warm too, but it's really focused in a space, one spot, and if you close your bedroom doors, it's not going to function. Whereas a furnace, you turn on the furnace and you have the ductwork everywhere, so it goes in all areas. So that's sort of the difference between the central heating and the space heaters. So we'll start looking at a couple things. Ooh. There we go. All right, so when we're talking about what we have mostly for fuel around here, a lot of it is oil, so a ton of oil. So we're going to talk about tanks for just a bit. Most of the tanks that we have around here are the metal tanks. Metal tanks can be put inside your house or outside. The ideal would be inside your tank for a few reasons. First thing you think of is weathering. The age that the insurance will allow you to keep them is usually a little longer for an inside tank than an out. They vary from about 10 years to 20, depending on your insurance company. But generally speaking, outside tanks, they quite often will give you 10-year life. Inside tanks, they go up to 15 or 20, and they'll vary from insurance company to insurance company. So that's one feature of it. Second one is for if you ever did have a spill, chances are if it's on the outside of your house, it very well could be to the side of your house, you're never even there. So if it starts to leak, next thing you know, you have a full tank full of oil gone. It's down into your ground. You have an environmental issue. You're digging up your ground, your neighbor's ground. It's a nightmare. If it happens to leak inside your house, chances are you'll smell it, or you might catch it. It'll be down in your basement. You'll know what's going on, and it sort of contains it a little better. It's never good, but it certainly takes down the price of it.
So if your tank was leaking, would you be prepared, or would you just get a whole new tank?
Depends on the issue, I imagine. It would be most likely at the valve. If it's rusted underneath, it's a completely different thing. It depends on the issue.
The tank is rusted.
Yeah, like if you think of like an outside tank, if it were to rust underneath here, well then the tank is gone. If there's an issue at the valve, possibly the valve itself can be fixed. So every case will be a little different. Good day, sir. Yeah. The temperature will affect your oil as well. So when you're thinking of outside tank, when it goes from drastic temperatures from warm to cold, it actually affects how much sludge builds up in your oil, and it's not quite as efficient. So an inside tank is better for that reason as well. And you think not only for weather, but even for vandalism. If you think of you're away for the weekend, somebody could hurt your valve or kick it over if they want to be that way. If it's outside your house, if it's inside, it's a little safer. So if it's possible, it's better to be inside, but not necessary. It's either way for a metal tank. For the fiberglass tank, fiberglass does not rust, so usually they put them on the outside. Occasionally you will see them inside, but that seems foolish. Yeah, well, it is. You do see it sometimes, though. This one actually, I think, is just sitting in a garage right now. I don't think it's installed or anything. They last longer. Insurance-wise, we'll give them, depending on, again, your insurance company, they can go up to 25 or 30 years more often. They're usually given a limited lifetime manufacturer's warranty of 25 or 30 years from ZCL or Vilco or whoever makes them. So that's a benefit. They do cost a little more, but you get more life out of them, and they won't rust. So if you see that, that's what it is. It's just a fiberglass oil tank. The price of them? They vary, but somewhere between like $1,000 to $1,500 is probably the ballpark. Yeah, for well, if for both, like you're maybe roughly, what do you think, Ann, about 1,000 for a fiberglass? Yeah, exactly. Like the whole.
That's taking it the other one. And also only transfer oil from metal fiberglass.
If you have some left, yeah.
And you still have oil in a metal tank. By metal tank.
Yeah, and it's because of sludge and stuff. They don't want to be pulling that out. Every now and then you'll get somebody that says, "Hey, I've got about a half a tank," and if they're that way, they'll probably try to get you at least half of it or something. But in theory, you're not supposed to pull it out because of what's underneath at the bottom, what's settling. You're not supposed to bring that to the next one.
And fiberglass doesn't rust?
Fiberglass doesn't rust, so they're not so worried about that aspect of it. But again, you're not supposed to be taking the sludge out. But if you take sludge from one to another, it's not affecting it the same.
Metal to metal, you usually have to time it.
Yeah.
So that it's almost empty.
Yes, exactly.
If you're fiberglass, switch it. The oil company installing it, switch the oil.
Mm. Yeah, the cold air, the sludge, the whole thing, that's all what's contributing to the rusting of the bottom of the metal tank. But fiberglass doesn't rust, so that's not quite the same issue.
I know this quality tank. When to do it. I'm like, oh, you're buying fiberglass, so well then.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're right, you do hear a lot of people timing it. I don't want to get any more oil till I'm close to the bottom, so you're not wasting too much of that oil as opposed to there's a half tank gone or whatever. This is basically just a typical photo of a typical furnace around here. Just looks like a giant metal box, usually down in the basement or maybe in a garage somewhere, and it's got all the metal ductwork that goes up into your house in all directions. So just sort of an identifier. When you see that, you have a furnace. It means forced air through your house. That would be a boiler system. So same idea. You still have your square box. You have your burner in the front, but instead of ductwork everywhere, it's all pipes everywhere, and they'll be either copper or a flex pipe, and they just go off in every direction. And that's for hot water baseboard all through that. Fun stuff. All right. So you know this, I imagine. Yeah. So this is what we're looking for when you're going through a house to list it or sell it or whatever. You're not expected to pick out everything, of course, but this is one thing that people can eyeball pretty easily. If you go downstairs or any unfinished area, you're looking at your piping, and if it's orange and it has big letters that say Kitech on it, then it's Kitech.
Is that off the furnace?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Or yeah, the boiler system. You're right.
Okay, no.
Furnace is like a generic term for everything, but
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
when you say
So
furnace,
it's usually the boiler, right?
yeah, like to be specific, furnace blows air, boiler does water,
Okay.
but people always call both of them furnaces,
Yeah, no,
right?
and
Yeah, it's just
Or is it all, like, if we had a client do it where he had said boiler, furnace, all, I don't know, or Rose or plumber
Yeah.
or something, came and went,
Yeah, right.
boilers, because they're plumbers, the water.
right.
They don't deal with
Right.
Yeah.
So it does matter.
Right.
Yeah, for our purposes, it definitely does. But generically, a client will quite often say, let's check the furnace, and it's really a boiler. That's just the catch-all name for them. But yeah, so there are other pipes that are issues as well, and there are specific details that we go into as inspectors, but you guys aren't expected to look for that and to know that. But just generically, if you're looking, you see bright orange piping that says Kitech on it, that's a heads up for you. Anything else, maybe you just say, hey, we need to get this checked just to be sure.
So the blue one there, that's not
Blue one
bad.
is probably not, though there is blue Kitech as well. There's a handful of different pipes that are issues, but mostly around here is the orange Kitech. There's very few of the other stuff, which is good. So we have one main issue in our area.
So let me ask you, and I always ask, had any tech issues, like where the tech is?
leaked or given away.
Did the whatever contact does?
Yes. Yes, we have. Actually, in one of the houses with you, actually with Ann, there was one that was in Bedford, and it was a slow leak on it at the time of the inspection. And then there was, yeah, maybe, yeah. I remember one particular one with you, but there's been 2 or 3. But it's like, and I always tell people too, when you're looking at a lot of this stuff, it's very much like, put it to like car dealerships. If you own a Chevy, but you have a Chevy recall, it doesn't mean every Chevy is going to be bad, but it's like this. Kitech has a manufacturer's defect. They're considered to be recalled for all of it. It won't happen to everyone, but it's happened to enough people that now you've got lawsuits involved, and now you've got the recalls, and the insurance freaks out and all that stuff. And it happens, so everyone's sort of covered under it because everyone is caught with it, not knowing what they're going to have. And when you have piping like that, it's one thing if it's just around your boiler and you see a leak and you can fix it. But what can happen is, you think of in like a Cape Cod or a 2-story house, this is pipes going all through your house everywhere. If that leaks anywhere, not only is it the pipe issue now you're changing out drywall and you're tearing down walls, and so it can become a nightmare, really. So yeah, you want to be ahead of that, right? So next picture is an example of what can happen to it. A lot of it is couplings, so you'll get leaks actually at your couplings, but this is actually a pipe that actually burst and actually split open, and that can happen as well. So yeah, it's an issue, but we can't ignore it. When we see it, we have to bring it up. And if you're going for a listing, it's like I said, it's good to get in front of that and say, hey, we have Kitech here. Either we need to switch it out, or we need to PCDS and talk about it to somebody. Just make sure everyone's aware of it, so no one gets a surprise. Yeah.
We all go orange.
Yeah, it's smart. If you have a boiler, first thing you do, you go downstairs, you look up in through your ceiling and see if you see it. If you see all copper, you're fine. Not that copper can't fail, but it's not a defect. This is considered to be defective. That'd be the difference. Natural gas. We don't have a whole lot of it around here, but that's what you're looking for. If you see a meter like that, you're on natural gas. Then you don't have to worry about oil tanks. You don't have to worry about fills and whatnot. This is permanent. It's there all the time. So if you're ever outside of a listing, or you're going to look at something to buy and you see one of those, okay, you've got natural gas. You're good to go. That's pretty much all you had to know about that, really. For your purse, I mean, you don't have to be going looking for problems. Just this is what you have. This is what you know you have. Yeah. Not particularly specific to natural gas that I'm aware of. It's just like any furnace or boiler or anything, we're going to go and check everything anyway, but there's no negative to this as to.
What does natural gas?
It would be like a furnace, yeah, or it could even be a boiler. Same thing, but instead of having your fuel source as an oil tank, now your fuel source is coming through a pipe in the ground that you don't have to fill up. Yeah, it can be anything really.
A little more modern.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they are more modern is the thing, right? It's around here at least. Like when you have people come over here from out west, this is all they know. Like oil tanks are like foreign to a lot of people from out west. They don't see a lot of it. But down here we have mostly coal, we have mostly oil. We're farther back in some ways.
I had furnace like ever, but I had.
Yeah, it's just your fuel source, right? So instead of having a fuel
source, not the actual.
Yeah, so instead of having a fuel tank at your house, there's a fuel tank miles and miles away that's being pumped to you, right? That's basically the idea. You still have a furnace or a system in your house that does the heat. This is just your fuel supply. So you just see a meter like that on the side of the house, now you know what you have. And I don't know what the percentages are to natural gas here, but we have such a rocky and old city. It's not as easy to lay it here as it is in some places, so we don't have nearly as much here as you do in some other areas of the country, especially out west. You get a lot of people. Yeah, anyone that comes down from that way are always sort of baffled by the oil tanks that we have. Yeah, that too. It catches people's eyes sometimes. Right. Now, wood stoves. And again, you're not expected to know everything about stoves and to check them out and do the wet certification, that whole thing. That's not a training thing that you have. Really only 2 things you really want to do when you see a wood stove in a house, I think. First of all is you can look at your front floor clearance because they're pretty much standard across the board. You want 18 inches floor clearance, non-combustibles. 18. Yeah, that's pretty standard for every wood stove. Now, you have tape measure, great. If you don't, you can sort of eyeball it, I guess, and say, yeah, that looks about 18. If it looks like a foot, you know, it's definitely not right. But again, you don't, from where the wood enters the face, right here, right there. So not from this part, but from that part. From door out, 18 inches. If you come down 18.
The door out?
Yep, from where you load. The door opening, yes, yeah, sorry. But wherever you put your wood, from there out, 18 inches down. And again, I don't expect, don't be there measuring it and confirming to someone, yeah, we've got 18 because you'll get yourself in hot water.
I would want, no pun intended.
Yeah.
I would just like to know,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
especially if I'm listing it. Well, actually.
Yeah. What do you have in your house for heat? Furnace? Yeah, so you don't have to worry about this kind of thing for you, but for listings, yeah. So so the two things would be, yeah, well, this is it. I mean, I don't expect you to confirm this for anyone, but if you look and say, yeah, that's about 18 inches, it gives you an idea that, yeah, we're probably okay, as opposed to being shocked later when someone comes to do the inspection and finding out, but you can sort of tell. The other thing would be a certification plate. And again, you don't have to read it or anything, but if you look around the back, if there's a plate on the back of the stove, just identify that there's one there. That's all you have to know. And then let someone like myself come in and confirm what that says and make sure you have your clearances for everything else for your sides and your rear. And
So in the back, at 18 inches too?
nope, that's always different.
A shield.
Depends. That's why they have a plate. They're always different. The only thing that's standard pretty much is the front clearance at your floor.
Okay.
Everything else can be anything. So that's what that plate tells you. And that's what you get someone to come in and say, okay, well, how much is it to the back, to the sides? What is it to the ceiling? And then you get into shields, because if you don't have your clearances, then you can use a shield to cut down your clearances. Typically, brick will cut your clearance in half. Sheet metal will cut your clearance in 2/3. So it makes a big deal when you go into a house and you see that someone has brick or sheet metal. Okay, well, now you have to know that this said 6 inches, but now I really only need 2. Or that sort of thing. So that's all the stuff that you can leave to somebody else and don't get yourself into it.
Right.
But two things, look for your floor clearance just to give you an idea, because again, you can clearly see if you only have 10 or 12 inches, you can sort of know that's not 18. Or look to see if there's a certification plate. Okay, at least you know you have a certified unit, and that's something that can be looked at further from somebody that's wet certified. If you don't see a tag or a certification plate, that means that your stove that means that your stove is non-certified. Doesn't mean not insurable. It just means non-certified, which basically means your clearances are outlandish. They're about 4 feet in every direction. So you can still use it, but it's not really functional for most homes. So if you think of like an unfinished area of your basement, just concrete floor and there's no walls or anything like that, you can still use one there, but it wouldn't be normal to have one in your living room or somewhere where you got to keep everything 4 feet away. That's just insane. But they can still be used. It's just a matter of are they certified or not. When we find those, usually it ends up that they end up getting sold to some on Kijiji or something to somebody.
And then someone else sticks them with
Yeah, that's true. That's wood stove insert. This is what I have in my house. Essentially, this is basically still a wood stove, but it's one that's designed to be slipped into the mouth of a fireplace. A fireplace really isn't functional. You're at about 15% function. So for heat, so when you're lighting a fireplace, you're basically putting your logs in and virtually all your heat is going straight up the chimney. Your power goes out. It's great just to keep yourself warm, but it's not really functional for your house. This is functional though. If you put this in, then you have a blower on it. You can actually heat a whole house with one of these. It still falls under category of space heater because the room that it's in is going to be the one that's hot. But if all your doors are open, it will warm up your whole house, and it's very functional. Same thing, 18 inches at the front. The problem with this is that there's some generic ones that, again, you don't have to get into, but the certification for this is usually on the back of the system, which you'll never see, because once it's placed into place, the shroud's put down, you'll never get back there again. But again, you only need to know 18 inches at the front. That's the only thing to sort of keep in your head. You look like you had a question.
One client just seen the other day and they put in
Yeah.
was there.
Yeah.
Stone.
Yeah.
And so they had hired a oh yeah, you know, plywood.
Plywood.
So he went and talked to whatever.
Yep.
This is our, I'm like, no, you
Yeah.
need like cement, chipboard,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Fire retardant.
Yep.
Whatever, special this and special that. If not, like drywall it. How you a house where it's like the ugly
Yeah.
brick and you don't want to brick.
Right.
Expert of how to finish that.
Mm.
How high does the mantle have? Blah blah blah. They're not stone.
Yeah.
He could have had to put that off.
Yeah, there's different ways to pretty it up that'll be functional, but then when you think of like the mantle that's above, depending on how much that comes out, it changes your clearances. So there's clearance for this, then there's a clearance for the big wooden mantle. It goes all over the map. So again, you get yourself into so you're not going to don't get into all of that. Just make sure that you know at least your front clearance, and if they have particulars that they want to do, okay, well then you pass it off to somebody else that you don't have to deal with, I would say.
18 inches from the glass floor or from the glass to
Glass to the front on your combustible floor pad. So you're yes, yeah, they're considered the same. It's still an open mouth that you're putting fire. You're opening up to put wood in for fire. The funny thing is when you're talking about fireplaces, and I think I've talked to you about this, when you're talking about open-faced fireplaces, it will vary depending on the size of your fireplace. Even though it's no glass, it's just an open place. It can go anywhere from 16 inches up to 24. Wood stoves are always 18, and nobody's been able to say to me why. They only fly 18 if you had glass at one point. If they're open, it's bizarre. But yeah, you think of an open fireplace with just an open place, you throw your wood in, 16 inches clearance. Now you have a wood stove with glass on it, now you need 18 inches clearance. It's an odd thing, and I've asked the head of Wet Incorporated Nova Scotia, and he said he doesn't even have an answer why it's that way. So that's what nobody seems to know. Nobody seems to know why it is or what, but it's a rule they've had for years and years, so we follow the rule. That's what it is. Next is the pellet stove. Pellet stoves are very efficient, very good. There's a difference between them and wood stoves in that the big thing is clearance. Instead of having your 18 inches and your 6 and your 8s and all over the map, pellet stoves can be pretty much tucked virtually anywhere. They usually only have 1 or 2 inch clearance. They're very good that way, yeah. And they don't.
Because it comes auger feeds it down.
You're not. Well, you don't really open this so much. So you're actually just pouring it in and just letting it do its thing.
Yeah.
So there's that, I guess. But even for the sides and the back, it doesn't seem to have the same kind of clearance requirement, which is good. They don't require a chimney. They have a side vent usually. So there's less cost that way. But the negative, I guess, on them would be they operate by a blower. So if your power goes out in a house with a wood stove, you put in your wood and you get through the storm. But if your power goes out with the blower and you don't have some kind of backup, it doesn't really do much for you. So there's pros and cons to everything. Some people don't want to be lugging in wood, but then you have the dust of the bags of pellets. So it's all.
If you were to build around that with special.
A little bit, but not a lot. You can have like a culvert or basically around it, same as you can with a wood stove, but then your clearances again are much bigger.
Is there such thing as a pellet stove, sir?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, usually what happens when you're looking at right here, this part here will still come up. You can lift that because it's sort of out from. Yeah, it's out from the wall. It's not flat against the wall. It's actually protrudes out a little bit. So when you have a pellet stove, this one actually flips up like a lid, and you can pour the pellets in and close it up again. They're not real common that I've seen, but they are here.
What, pellet stove?
Yeah, pellet stove inserts.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. There's more wood stove inserts than pellet, I think, but they're around. So this is an example of a certification plate. That's typically what one would look like on the back of a wood stove. And again, you just look around, see if you have a plate. If you see anything that looks like a plate at all, yes, it's certified. Okay, good to go. Move on to the next room and let somebody deal with that. And that's where all the measurements and requirements are all on there, what the certification is, the year and the model, that's all there for you. As long as you see one of those, you're good to go.
Do you know, just on your head, how old a stove is before it's not?
It depends on your insurance, and it depends on the stove itself. They say 20 to 30 years for some. Yeah. And then there's other ones that are 50 or 60 years and they're just as good as far as I'm concerned. But Yeah. And then, of course, inside the fire bricks sometimes fail and you just have to replace them. It's like, again, we go back to the car. If your muffler goes, you don't get rid of the car, you get rid of the muffler. So there's certain things you can do that way too. Same with blowers and everything else on your furnaces. You don't have to chuck the whole thing if your blower goes. Your burner, your blower, anything that goes, you just change what goes, right? Electric baseboard heaters. A little more complicated than you would think for some people. For electric baseboard heaters, they're still considered a space heater because they're in each individual room and they're done by a thermostat in each individual room. So even though they're all through the house, if I turn the one on in my living room, it's not heating up the bedroom. You leave all your doors open, it can go through, but it's not functioned that way. Really, the only things for you guys to look for this is as a heads up, and you don't have to, but I would suggest that you look, particularly if you're thinking of maybe like a basement that's been like a do-it-yourself kind of guy or whatever. We've come into, actually with you again, we've come into a time or two when somebody's put them in themselves, and typically you want them on the exterior wall. Under windows is ideal, but we actually have come into one where it was on not only the interior wall, but it was actually located right under the thermostat. So you turn on your thermostat, the heat goes up, turns it off, and the whole room stays cold because the thermostat thinks it's warm. So, and it's actually, yes. So you find funny things. Oh, you can a little bit, I guess. Put them down and just, yeah. But ideally, that's what you want. They're work around it. Okay, all right. Well, then you just keep your furnace, and then you don't have to worry about it. Yeah, but yeah, ideally, your thermostat is when you enter a room, it's there by the light switch on the interior wall, and your electric baseboard heaters on exterior walls, under windows when possible.
Under windows because that's where.
Yeah, it's a combination of the draft part. You want to keep the moisture from building up on your window, all that. So it's about that. So sometimes you'll even go into a room where they do have windows and the baseboard is actually off to the side. And that's fine as long as it works. But if you go into a house, once you live there, and you find that your window's constantly getting moisture on it or it's frosting up, you may want to consider actually moving that baseboard over under the window. And it might never happen, but it does to some people. So it's just something to think about. They should ideally be under windows if possible. Yep. All right, so heat pumps. Heat pumps they can be either, right? They can be the space heater if it's the one up on the wall, or it can be central heat if it's actually the one that's like a furnace. If it's the one that's basically like the big furnace that's ducted all through the house, then it's a space heater. I'm sorry, it's a central heating. So when you're even outside a house, you can know if you have a heat pump, if you see a big fan on the side of the house. So this is the big square one. This is the kind that you would find. This is the inverter for the ducted kind of heat pump, the central one. Nope, this is the one. This is the central one. So this is the one that's for the whole house. It's ducted all through the house. It's usually a big square, big box type fan. It looks kind of like that. Yeah, you'll have it outside because the whole point of the heat pump is you're bringing in air from outside and making it warm for your house. Or in the summer, the reverse. You're bringing in the warm air and you're cooling it and making it into air conditioning. And that's pretty much what they kind of look like. Same as like a furnace, right? Just a big box with all your duct work that goes off in every direction into every room. Yep. Yep. So you have the fan on the outside of the house, your furnace type thing inside the house. That's your central ducted heat pump. This is what they look like when it's the one that's up on the wall. So this is the ductless one. This is what they call like the mini-split. Yeah, well, then it just goes on your wall as opposed to the whole system through the house. See what it is you're. Okay, tell me what you're trying to.
Attach that to a house.
Right.
There's no source to blow
Okay.
Yes.
and cool through the house.
You need ductwork, right? You need somewhere for it to blow the air.
Ducted means
Okay.
duct. Right. So when you see the other boxes on the ceiling,
Right.
flat on the wall,
Yeah.
There's no
they
ductwork.
don't have ductwork. It's a boiler or they have
Right.
electric heat.
So when they say that heat pumps, saying electric, they say that heat pumps, like say, don't work very well if it's minus whatever,
Mm.
then your electric heat kicks in.
And have a ductless system.
Then we're going to talk to that.
Ductless.
Gang, we're going to get that out in a second. Yeah, because when you have this one, the central one, this is going, like I said, to all rooms. Like you have ductwork, just like in your house with the furnace. So instead of using oil that you have, you use a fan basically, and it's the same idea. It goes all through your house. You turn on your thermostat, and air blows into every room through the ductwork, right?
Right.
When you have an electric heat and you have no ductwork in your house, then you have the ductless mini-split. If you're actually putting one up, I'll jump to it here. This kind. This lady is
Right.
enjoying her book. That could be you.
What is she's reading?
Oh, looks pretty heavy. So this one here, this is the one that's sort of categorized as a space heater. So if we were like in this room, if we were to stick one here in this room, it would heat up this room. If we leave those doors open, the air would get out and it would sort of warm it up. But everyone with their office doors closed would get no effect from this, right? So same in a house. Quite often what you'll get with these that have been sort of converted, you'll have a house that probably has electric baseboard heat, very much like this. So all these gray things are like electric baseboard heaters.
Oh, okay.
Right? And the red obviously indicates indicates the warmth. So this is your heat off of all your electric baseboard heaters. If you put in a ductless system, you no longer use this heater in your living room area, and it'll heat all through the house as long as your doors are open.
Right.
Mainly here, but it makes its way, right?
Right.
You start closing off these doors, you still need these electric baseboard heaters to keep you warm at night if you're closing up your doors, because this isn't going to do the whole house like your ductwork would. Your ductwork will heat up the whole house in every location, right?
So ductless is like a space heater, and
Yeah.
ducted is like central.
Exactly. You have ducted heat, right? You have.
I know, I'm so happy with myself.
Yeah, your furnace is ducts. There's ductwork everywhere in your house. Space heater, not all over your house. It's in a space. And again, it can heat throughout, but it's not designed that way. It's not. You start closing doors, you've cut off.
That's why sometimes you'll see one on each floor.
Exactly. Yeah, you go into split entries or whatever. There's one in the living room, one in the family room, and it helps disperse it better. But again, you start closing bathroom and bedroom doors, it's not getting in there. So that's why you still need your electric baseboard heat in those as a backup. Now, when you were asking about temperatures, they're rated depending on the unit, quite often up to about minus 19 or so, minus 20, and that doesn't go for wind chill. That's just your straight on your temperature. So we have an excellent climate for them because we don't usually get down lower than that for very long. So you go out Winnipeg somewhere, minus 40 for 4 weeks in a row, not so great. But for here, it's fairly mild compared to that. So they usually work really well, and it's very rare that they actually kick out because of just too darn cold. So that's a plus for us. Yep.
Question.
Yes.
We got caught that we client thought it was closing. Looked like chocolate. It was an air conditioner.
Yeah. You're right.
Looked exactly like a ductless heat pump.
Wow.
It was not.
It was an air conditioner that looked like a heat pump. Why would you have that?
I know.
Why not get a heat pump? They do both.
But normally they do both.
Yeah.
So is there a way to identify whether it provides heat or not when you're looking at it?
First thing I always do when I go in is I look for the remote control. And on it actually says heat, and it shows you the temperature that you can go to or whatnot.
Okay.
That's the super easiest way because you're but
Why people do anything?
yeah, I'm sure it was a lot cheaper than a heat pump. But if you think,
Why does people do
Anyone
anything?
was wondering why they weren't warm in the winter or anything like
yeah,
that.
It honestly didn't even occur to us.
no,
So the
that's
remote
odd.
tells you if-
Well, yeah, if
that's
you
right.
get, I mean, like a remote for anything, it tells you what it does, and this one usually gives you a temperature, and like it'll even say like hot or cold or and fan or heat, and it goes
All
up.
of these heat pump systems will also provide air conditioning.
Yes, exactly, and they do the reverse. Instead of taking in cool air and using the inverter to bring that in, and then all of a sudden you're pumping in the warm air into the house, they can do the reverse. If it's warm outside, it changes the air, makes it cool inside. And there are limits to that too, as to how super hot it gets outside. It can only work so hard. And again, we don't usually get it hot enough in the summer for that to matter. So they're very functional for us temperature-wise around here. You hear a lot of complaints about them if they're fitted wrong to your house, or if they're fly-by-night guys who are handy. Yeah, so if you get somebody who puts one in that's not qualified to put it in, or wants to sell you the cheapest thing possible and they're not sized, then you get a lot of complaints for that kind of thing. But generally speaking, if they're done, put in right, and they're they're done in a professional manner, they're usually pretty good. Yes.
Why say,
Why do they save people money?
I give you electric heat?
Oh, I thought you were going to put the cheap
Why are
ones.
they saving money? I don't necessarily
You're
understand.
not using.
But there's, what, it's still doing something, like I'm trying to
Well, yeah.
understand
Well, it's a lot about how much power they take.
Okay.
So you think, like, again, we come back to this one. You're using all these individual heaters, right? This one here, one heat source, which is basically for this living room, dining room area here, that runs the equivalent heat of equivalent energy of one of these, which is basically doing most of your house all the
That's what I
time.
didn't understand.
Yeah. So in this house, you're always turning on all of these all the time to keep your house warm. Here, you virtually always have just this on. These are hardly ever on. So
And
instead
the
of
ducting
running,
system,
well, again,
because you're not using oil.
you're not using oil. You're basically running off something that's, again, not taking a lot of energy to run.
I
It's
just didn't really, I mean, everybody talks about how they
Yeah.
do it, but I'll be honest, I don't really
Yeah.
actually
it's
understand.
almost like a passive thing. Like it
Why?
basically just does its thing. You leave it. Yeah. Well, you set it at a temperature that you like, and usually people are roughly around 20 or so, and you don't dick around with it. You just leave it, and it just does its thing day in, day out, and you just come into a constant level temperature in a ducted heat, a ducted home, and it's just nice and cozy, and it's not burning the same energy. You don't have that meter going around and around like if you had all your electric baseboards in the house trying to keep your house at 20, it would kill you. But to do it just with the duct system or the ductless even, it's just much lower, and it's just not taking as much energy.
I appreciate that, because I just wasn't, yes, oh yeah, I'll save money, but
Yeah.
not really.
Yeah. Well, there's a cost up front, right? I mean, these aren't cheap.
No,
So
and it's, how much are you gonna save over the?
right. So it's got to be worth it.
You know what? I just had a client that had one for a full year. It was from January to June. And, or no, or something, but it was a full year. And he saved $695 on his power bill.
Yeah.
For just that. And he used a lot
Yeah.
all the time. So he used a air conditioning part of it,
Right.
like really high, but he was ecstatic.
Yeah, well, if you paid 5,000, and it'll take you 5 years to pay it off,
Yeah, for
generally.
sure.
because
Right.
the-
Yeah, and his was about $38.
Yeah. It's sort of depending on your house again. Around the 3,000 to 4,000 is fairly normal.
This is the same idea as the savings from ETS stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's your benefit, right? Like if I'm getting heat all the time from this source, now I'm getting heat all the time from this source, plus I get the benefit of my air conditioning in the summer, and I'm saving money over time. I mean, why wouldn't you if you can? Yeah, because ETS only serves one purpose, right? It's just for heat, and that's good too. But it's nothing wrong with that. But this is dual purposed, really. So yeah, people like them. Depends on that on the system again. I keep hearing between 10 to 20. So
They haven't been around.
no,
That very either.
no, it's
Ducted ones have.
yeah, ducted ones have. The ductless, yeah, but the ductless ones have just took off.
I grew up, my mother had air conditioning. 25 as soon as I started, and she had it until they moved out in 70. They just had it serviced every year. They had the big thing outside serviced
Right.
every year.
Well, just like any furnace or anything, you'd have a servicing agreement. You'd have someone come in and change your filters and whatever you have to do.
It's a commercial. No, or the van.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually, now that you mentioned that, that's an excellent point that I forgot to mention to you. Depending on your house, you might have snow drifts, that sort of thing. Definitely you want to keep the snow clear of them. It's something that people tend to forget. And it's the same with your dryer vents and anything else that's around low on your house. You want to make sure that the snow is cleared from everything. And sometimes, especially if you're around the side of your house that you don't want, people forget. You just clear your path to your house and you forget to go around to the sides and do what you have to do. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you're making this thing struggle and work a lot harder than it should, and sometimes it kicks out and that sort of thing. And that's why, it's because it's being smothered, right? Yeah. We done? Oh yeah, that's the house I'm gonna have if I'm a Smurf. Kinda. Yeah. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. That's your big ones. That's the ones that are around fairly commonly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. There are others, like you touched on the ETS and things like that. There are other systems, but yeah. Yeah.
on the floor. It's like a big,
Yes,
big gray box, yeah.
Big metal bench that sticks.
It's in a
Yeah.
weird place, in a
Yeah.
fixed furniture
Yeah.
box.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's a negative on that is that you can't be sliding them around. They're stuck. They're wired in, so they're stuck where they are. You had to be happy where they are. But
Could you build a box around them, or is there some kind of?
no, it needs to radiate the heat out of it, so it needs to be left as it is.
It was a big gray box.
Yeah, I know. People engineer these things.
Yeah. It depends on the house, right? Some houses it fits in and it's not interfering with anything and it works out great.
Should that be on a certain level, or?
It depends again on your house and how you want it. Yeah. Down in rec rooms or maybe in the dining room of a split entry.
One in the rec room that would do the whole thing.
Well, it's a space heater again, right? So same idea, right? It emanates and radiates heat from where it is. So if your whole house is open, it will get through. Electronic thermal storage.
And what's the purpose of it? Why is it that you like it so much?
Essentially, it's basically a box of bricks, and it actually sucks in the heat that's actually brought into your house through the off-peak hours in the nighttime. So you're actually sucking in the heat at the cheaper price, keeping it contained in a box, and then in the daytime when your prices go up, you're releasing the heat at that time, so you're not paying those higher prices. So I always tell, yeah, they're much cheaper. So I do the thing of school. Yep. So I always use the example again about I use the example again of a car. If you know that your gas is going up tomorrow, you'll fill up your tank today so you can drive around tomorrow on today's price. So it's the same idea. Your price of your kilowatts or whatever, and the nighttime is a lot cheaper. You're sucking it in, you're holding it in there, and then in the day you're releasing it. Yeah, it's like a ceramic type brick issue thing. I've never seen the inside of one, but that's how it's explained to me. Yeah. I like weird questions.
In the fiberglass,
Yep.
is there a metal lining?
It's double walled, so you have a tank inside a tank. So if
Okay,
the
so it's like the,
so if the inner core inside leaks, it has nowhere to go. It stays inside the tub of the outside
but
anyway.
it's not like, the oil's not sitting.
I don't think. I think it's actually in a tank inside the tank.
Like wrapped in, it's like
Bubble wrapped around, right? So if anything gets out of that first side, it gets, yeah. We'll cut one open one day. Bring
Seriously, that's what I want.
slice ones, see what it looks like down the middle. Yeah. Oh, there you go. There's the ETS bricks.
Oil that goes through and then.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, so it heats them and keeps them nice and hot. There's a thing called, have you ever heard of I'm going to say it wrong, but it's German. I think it's like a Ketchup. There's a thing that the Germans make called, I'll call it a Ketchup. And down the shore, down around Hubbard's and Chester, there's guys that make them, and they're elaborate, and they cost like $40,000 and $50,000. These big, beautiful fireplaces is what they are. And you make you probably have seen, and they make a fire in basically just like a wood stove fireplace kind of thing, but it heats the whole bloody thing, and the heat just emanates off of this thing all for a day for the sake of one little fire that you just put in, you let it go out, and it just heats the whole house for the whole day.
All I know is in the last.
Yeah, they can be beautiful. They can be a focal point of very like the focal point of your whole house is this big, nice bench thing with ceramic, and they're so elaborate and nice. And then it's just a little place that you make your fire, close it up, and you don't have to keep it going all day. That fire will emanate heat off of the whole bloody thing, and it's beautiful. But they're pricey.
Can I ask you about two other systems that are maybe less
No, I'm done.
Okay, so can you explain two kinds of
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I know there's.
Yeah. So for you guys again, you're not going to identify them.
You can't ask because I've walked in houses that.
Right.
No rats.
Yes, and we had that whole nonsense
So
before.
That's ceiling, that's
Yeah, but it's still in floor.
Sorry, I missed a little.
In floor, the two kinds of like we had a house listed. In floor, hot water, electric, heated.
Yeah.
So it wasn't oil, but it was a boiler.
Yeah.
It's electric. So and it was in floor, and we were like,
Oh, yeah.
Googling.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
oh, and with Kitech, just,
Yeah, sure. Why not? Throw it all, a nice hodgepodge. Yeah, there's in ceiling as well. Yeah. Well, for the
The other one's ceiling, but no Kitech.
yeah, for the in-floor rating, and the same as the in-ceiling, but the in-floor radiant heat is usually two ways. It's electric coils. That's basically just a coil that looks like the inside of a toaster. Or it's hot water, instead of hot water baseboard. So instead of the boiler system that goes to your baseboards out, it's just a boiler system that goes into pipes that loop around and go into your floor. Yeah? Okay. So then, yeah, so that's underneath your floor, and you can't visually see it, but we always bring a thermal imaging camera with us, and we turn it on, and we show you there. We can actually see the bright lines to make sure that they're actually working. So that's good. But you kind of have to know that it's there, so someone should tell you. But you can.
If you walk in and you don't have your shoes on it.
If you feel your ceramic tile is nice and cozy, yeah, for sure.
So the question we've asked is Kitech.
Yeah.
It's like,
All right.
so
Right.
they packed it.
Yeah, they'll cut them and.
And then they had to install that.
Yeah.
From the hot water, they somehow connected.
It was like an ETS, basically, it was a storage system, like storage boiler.
Yeah.
Boiler.
Yeah.
Oh, kind of ran like a system.
Yeah.
It's hurting our head all the time.
But,
Yeah. Sounds like.
How much was it for them to do that? Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Probably
it
it's.
cost them 30, but I lost money on it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
Well, no, because they had to get rid of they had to actually put the boiler in, because the one that was there, the electric one, storage system one, wouldn't work with the that external route.
And we had two houses, one in both the ceiling, which makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
As heat rises, I don't get it. I don't understand why it's in the ceiling. I don't understand how that's effective. Why?
In ceiling, yeah, and those wouldn't. I can't imagine they wouldn't ever be hot water. They'd always be electric for leak purposes.
Yeah.
They are functional and they actually work really well. But when they go, then they're a mess to repair or replace. Is the thing.
The ceiling.
Yeah.
So we had one that didn't work, so they had to put electric fans in.
Instead of taking it out, I guess you just leave it
Well,
and
it was
just.
too expensive to do.
Yeah.
Those old-fashioned radiators that you see.
It was the same as your.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Just the same thing,
They
but
are hot water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I like those.
the swirly doos, yeah, those are nice, but those are old house kind of thing
Yeah.
you would see. And same idea, but now we're into the modern baseboard
Right.
type thing, but it does the same thing.
Well, we had office.
Yeah.
They were big.
Yeah.
On. Yes, and they rattle and one time that one explode. That's a conversation.
That clink and clank,
Do they
yeah.
have valves on the side or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
You're not supposed to
No,
know.
I know.
We were supposed to.
Just there to tempt you.
And
The
then,
sounds of that, they need to go on.
yeah, they would bring in plumber guy. And then the only other
Air
system that I've seen is a.
It's not a lot of that around here either. Propane.
Like, our
You-
parents have that in the Glasgow, but they did that just because they're ready for natural gas, so.
Yeah.
Switch over, runs the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Same deal. So propane, mostly what we have around here for propane is just propane fireplaces, right?
Yeah.
But occasionally you will come across other heat sources, and they actually hook them all through the house for your stove, and then they hook it up into the deck for your barbecue, and everything runs off of your big propane tank as opposed to individuals.
Well, in
Even your
Ontario,
dryer.
Natural gas. Barbecues and they're attached to the house. When you sell the house holiday, if you exclude barbecue, it's taxed.
Oh, really?
And they're fixed here.
Yeah.
Fixed to the gas line.
Yeah.
A lot of people lost barbecues.
Yeah. Your barbecue stays with your house, yeah.
But I wonder who, I guess, smart seller's agent or buyer's agent.
It's a
Yeah.
fixture.
You got to be on top of that, yeah. Yeah.
So if barbecue is attached to the propane
Mhm.
and the propane.
There's no, like the propane tank is wherever on the side of the house, and
Yeah.
there's lines going to the house.
Yeah.
One might go to your stove in the kitchen, so you can gas
Oh,
stove.
right,
Yep.
okay.
And your dryer.
Barbecue and your dryer and all that stuff. So as they're fixed, like it's not like something you just, yeah, you don't just
Like big barbecue.
Oh,
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
exclude them because they're a fixture. Shook the house, they'd stay attached.
Yeah.
So if you're unattached, I mean,
Just exclude it. But generally, the average person is not detaching.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're not my husband.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
guys have other questions?
So.
Tanya?
This is a system. I've seen you and stuff. What I have
That
either
box
a little
thing?
G or like a box that no.
Your air exchangers and heat recovery ventilator, is that what you
No, the
mean?
big, long, skinny thing.
Oh, the dehumidifier, the Humidex?
Humidex.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are they good?
Depends on who you talk to. Some people say they're good, some people say they're useless.
It's actually
Built in.
Built-in?
Yeah, instead of having an air exchanger in your house, the box, right? Quite often you'll get houses that are older than when they came out in the early 80s.
Oh, okay.
Before that, especially in your basements that are damp or humid, people will put the Humidex in. And some people will say, yeah, that works for me. It works like an air exchanger. And other people will argue all you're doing is just bringing in air from outside. It's of no purpose.
you say no.
Honestly, I have no opinion either way. They seem to work for some people, but they seem to be garbage for others. I'm not. I'm not.
Push that back. That's not the word.
Use air.
Well, then you're probably better off just having like a dehumidifier, a portable dehumidifier in your house, as opposed to sucking in air and from the outside the house. That's what the argument is, anyway. Yeah. If you Google that, you'll find the same thing. You'll have people that say they swear by them, then other people say they're absolute garbage and a waste of money. So usually the people installing them say they're pretty good.
We don't see them in a house that.
No, that's why. Yeah, my house is built in '75. I don't have an air exchanger. It's always damp in my basement. I'll put a Humidex in. So
It's in between.
yeah, it's one that you don't have to. Again, ductwork. You don't have to do ductwork. You just stick it in your on your wall, and you have 2 holes, and just cycles air through. Yeah. So does it work? I don't know. People swear by them. People hate them. Who knows?
Are they still efficient?
Well, as efficient as an air exchanger, but it's would you put it in, or would you just go get yourself a dehumidifier and be done with it? You know, probably better off, really. But then you have a tray of water you have to dump out, and so there's that. There's pros and cons to everything, I guess. Yeah. Awesome possum. All right. Before we go, we're gonna play a little game.
I do. Oh, is it going to be question and answers though?
No, I'm not gonna. Let's see who can find the candy cane. Whoever finds the candy cane gets a little gift.
Poor Monica doesn't get to play.
Sorry, Monica.
Sorry, Monica.
So this gift won't change your life, but it might change your lunch. That's very clever.
You can't start. You can't start. No, you can't start.
Oh, I didn't get it.
Never should have choose. I was gonna say, and you just took it for yourself.
I didn't even look at them. Oh, that's a good idea though.
Did Tanya win?
Daniel on.
Whoever wins has to share the chocolates, though. You can share. You're very welcome.
That was very good. Thank you very much.
What did you get?
I'll grab a card from you too, Holly.
Yes.
Have you had one?
Certainly.
I'll trade you.